Good morning, everybody. It is 10 a.m. We're going to give everybody about 2 or 3 minutes if they're still yet to join us.
Morning, Erica.
Good morning.
Charlie Brown's coming.
I am putting my headphones on because I have to listen to a public hearing Zoom. You don't. How long did it take? I don't know, but you just keep your thing going.
All right, good morning again, everybody, and thank you for joining us virtually for the PHA Plan Public Hearing. We are going to go over a couple of guidelines just so that we can stay a little bit organized, but if you could please enter your name and your organization or company in the chat so that we can record your attendance. Please mute your mic if you are not actively speaking. Turning on your video is optional. And if you could please wait until after the presentation of the annual plan to ask a question. You could also type your question in the chat box. I will be monitoring that. For those of you who are joining us on the YouTube live stream, I'm also going to be monitoring the YouTube chat. So if you need to ask a question in that capacity, you may go ahead. And questions and comments will be addressed after the presentation of the plan. If everybody can please mute your mic, I'm getting a little bit of interference and feedback. That would be great. And now I'm going to turn it over to our Tenant Assistance Program staff for the presentation of the PHA plan.
Thank you, Erica. Good morning, everyone. Seems like we have a full house this time, so doing virtual seems to help things. We appreciate your time this morning. We'll just do quick introductions just so you know who you are speaking with today. My name is Marty Manus-Chilcote, and I am the Housing Policy Analyst for the Housing Choice Voucher Program.
I'm Jonathan Coulter. I am the Managing Director of Tenant Assistance Programs.
And I'm Stacy Sanders, and I'm the Assistant Director of Tenant Assistance Programs.
So we appreciate your time this morning. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. Eric, if that's okay.
Sure thing.
Good deal. Awesome. So if you've ever attended a public hearing for the PHA plan, you may or may not know. So Kentucky Housing is required by federal regulations to submit a public housing agency annual plan for a rental assistance program. We are required to do a public hearing, and then we are to submit that to the Department of Housing and Urban Government. Our federal regulations require that we describe our programs, operations, strategies, and how we are meeting our local housing needs. So this year with our annual plan that has went to the board on February 23rd, we discussed some of our new vouchers. So the tenant assistance programs portfolio, we are currently receiving 6,438 vouchers. And we were previously receiving 6,392. So we've received some new funding sources. We received 46 fair share vouchers during this year. These vouchers are considered a regular housing choice voucher, but we do have the opportunity to, at our discretion, to provide a preference for survivors of domestic violence, individuals or families who are homeless as defined by the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, or at risk of homelessness. We were awarded those vouchers on October 1st of 2022. We've also made over 2,500 offers off of our regular housing choice voucher waiting list to increase our overall program utilization. And we continue to promote our landlord engagement on our website. We created an HCV landlord website page. We are also doing webinars on a quarterly basis for new and continued landlords. We have also created a housing choice voucher landlord e-gram that anyone is able to sign up for to receive information regarding our housing choice voucher program and how it relates to our landlords. And then as we roll out our new programs, special programs, we also provide that information as well. And as always, we do have it in our 5-year plan as well as our annual plan every year, that our focus is to increase our utilization and to increase our utilization on our special purpose vouchers. So with that is the closing of our presentation. We have received some questions prior to the meeting. So if everyone's in agreement with that, I will go ahead and go over those questions and then we can open the floor if that's okay, Erica.
That sounds great.
Right. So Adrian, we appreciate the questions that you provided up front. It's very helpful for us so we can get you the information that you've requested. Your first question was KHC makes reference to increasing utilization of vouchers in the 5-year plan. What is the current utilization rate for all of our HCV programs, including our special purpose vouchers? So I'll start with our regular housing choice voucher utilization rate. We are currently at 76% utilization, but we are at 89% utilization of our funds. So given the fact that we use more of our funds for the families that we do have leased, our utilization can't be as high as, of course, as we would like it to be. So it's a numbers game. So again, we are at 76% utilized for our regular housing choice vouchers. For our emergency housing vouchers, we are at 50% utilized. With our mainstream vouchers, we are at 71%. With our family unification program, we are currently at 43%. And with our VASH, which are Veterans Administration Supportive Housing vouchers, we are at 60% currently. The next question was, which COC providers are making referrals to the special purpose voucher programs? Adrian, there are numerous agencies that are making referrals. I just have a few names of the referrals that we get from LKLP, Safe Harbor, Patino Shelter, HHCK, of course, St. Benedict's, Welcome House, Salvation Army, Clark County Community Action. So those are just to name a few of the CLC agencies that we do receive referrals from. And we do appreciate those referrals. Keep them coming. I'm going to skip the next question and go down to expedite the lag time between unit approval and inspection. Would KHC consider allowing CLC referring organizations to inspect the unit? So our short answer to that is regrettably no. But we in our department feel like that we've made great strides to help streamline that process. So what we have done is we have gotten with our compliance team, Dustin Clark, who is the manager of our compliance inspectors. to shorten the time frame for our EHB voucher inspections as well as our mainstream voucher inspections to 5 business days, 5 KHC business days. So we hope that that will help to streamline that process and get those inspections done more timely. Also, within the last 6 months, what department was that, John?
HCA, Housing Contract Administration.
Housing Contract Administration Department has hired what they call housing connecting teams. So they have hired 4, if not 5, if I'm mistaken, housing connectors, and they're located strategically all over the state of Kentucky to work with some of the COC programs as well as our emergency housing vouchers. Their role to work with the EHB vouchers is to help those folks once they have received a voucher to locate housing, walk them through the process of the leasing documentation, work with the landlords, whether that be negotiating rent amounts or just connecting them with the correct landlord. And they have also been recently trained to do HQS inspections. We have successfully completed some HQS inspections with our housing connecting teams. So we feel that that has been a very successful program and pilot, and we will be using that moving forward. And we'll also be using that for our mainstream program as the need arises. So what we are doing with our mainstream program is if we have someone in an extenuating circumstance, maybe they're reaching the end of their voucher, they're having to find a unit, they've had units, but those units have failed, and we need to help them to find adequate housing. We're reaching out to our housing connecting team and partnering them with that mainstream voucher holder to get them into a unit and let them be successful on the mainstream program. Those needs seem to be becoming more frequent. And how that process works is if we have a client on mainstream that we feel is in need of that service, then we have our special purpose voucher manager reach out to our manager that's over our housing connectors and partner with them. So we feel that that's been very helpful and we'll continue, like I said, to do that moving forward. The last question submitted was that there appears to be confusion among HCV staff and applicants about the role of the referring agency and voucher process. Is there a way for HCV staff to transparently clarify who is responsible for what aspects of the process and connect applicants directly to HCV after the referral has been made? So Adrian, this was a question that you have submitted. If you wouldn't mind, if you can give me just a little bit more information so I can make sure that I can answer your question correctly. Can you elaborate on that just a little?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for going through our questions.
Sure.
So I occasionally have to play operator at our HHCK office.
Uh-huh.
And I get a lot of phone calls, right?
Okay.
And I also I will get phone calls from people who have made it who are in a special purpose voucher program. They have made it all the way through all the the application, the briefing. They're waiting on an inspection.
Okay.
And they call and they yell at me because we haven't done the inspection. Well, we can't, as you just clarified. And then they will be like, well, we talked to the inspection and they're still waiting on the paperwork from the caseworker. And the client will assume that by caseworker, that we are the caseworker. They're not waiting on casework from us. We've done all that. They're waiting on internal HCV stuff. But basically, if there's a way that you all can, I don't know. I don't know. This is tricky where it has to come from, a COC referring agency. It's just really frustrating being on our end of things where we are doing the intake, doing all the initial paperwork, trying to track down IDs, trying to track this down, trying to get the land, all of that. And we have zero control over the process. And with the housing shortage and people's inability to even get a unit within the allotted time that, federal regs give us or statutes or whatever. People are cranky, myself included. And they don't understand, obviously, because there are different layers of bureaucracy here. But it's getting harder and harder for me and my staff to be like, we have done everything we can do. We have zero control on this from here on out. So does that kind of help explain where I'm coming from?
It does. And first of all, I want to say we appreciate your patience. We appreciate your partnership. We too receive those cranky phone calls. So we totally commiserate with what you're dealing with. What we do on our end is, and we have when we do our COC trainings, we talk about the process in a whole, right? So we talk about the layers of things that we have to do regulatory wise on our side. I do want to address the issue of the voucher time. So when we took our admin plan to the board back in December, we changed our voucher timeframes to the voucher timeframe is now 120 days. Okay. So I do want to make sure that, and we talked about that in the training that we did recently, that the voucher is now 120 days. Families have an opportunity to request an extension, whether it be that they are having trouble finding adequate housing, or they are elderly and or disabled. So they can receive an extension of another 90 days. And then after that 90-day extension, they may request one more 30-day extension, giving them a total of 210 days, which is 7 months on their voucher. So we felt that was understanding that the housing market is what it is today, that the 210 days would be adequate, totally understanding that there are persons out there that are still struggling. We work with those on extenuating circumstances, of course. So that's our voucher time frame. I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that our voucher time frames have been upped. As far as the process, you receive the leasing packet. Once we receive that leasing packet, if it's completed in its entirety, right, we have all of the information that we need and it is correct. Then we have regulatory requirements. We have to do what we call unit eligibility, and that's a two-step process. So that is determining that the unit is rent reasonable based off the regulatory requirements that we are giving, stating that the unit is not being charged more for folks that are on our program versus those that are not. So if we find that we do not have enough comparable units, which one would think that we would, but there are areas that we do not, there's not enough rent comparables in the area. So we have to work to get those comparables to be able to compare the unit. And then sometimes we have to negotiate the rent. The unit will be too high based off of the family's voucher amount. Sometimes that takes time. So understanding that when you all turn in the leasing packet, to the inspection, there is that process in between. That's probably where you're getting some of those phone calls. It's like, I turned in my leasing packet, but I still don't have my inspection. So I would imagine that some of that is that process. We do appreciate your patience. If you get those phone calls, let them know or shoot those phone calls to us. We'll be more than glad to go over that process with the client as to what we are waiting on. Sometimes it's a matter of we've reached out to the landlord to negotiate the rent and we don't hear from him for him or her for a couple of days, sometimes a week. So we too are at the mercies of the landlord sometimes. So again, we'll be more than glad to take those calls as you get them. Shoot us an email, say, hey, such and such wants to know where they are in the process with their leasing packet, and we'll be more than glad to answer those questions. Does that help at all?
Yeah, I think so.
And we understand. I mean, of course, with mainstream and of course our EHV programs, we are bound by regulatory requirements. We get it.
As are we. Yes, yeah. I understand that.
Understand. So we have done everything that we can when we took on the mainstream program, when we took on the EHV program. We sat with our management team to try to streamline those processes as much as we can, given the fact that we know the clientele that we're dealing with and that we're trying to serve. So again, we just appreciate your patience and your partnership. Just be patient with us. And if you have questions, reach out to us. We'll be more than glad to help you.
What would be the best way to, who should we be sending emails to? Because sometimes we get auto responses that are like, we're super busy right now.
Yeah, so our email accounts, we monitor those. So there are days where we are receiving over 300 or 400 emails a day. So we have those auto responders on there just to say, hey, we got your email. We will get back with you. We found that by doing the auto responders, it helps to alleviate those emails coming in one right after the other because they didn't get any type of response. Right. So that's the intent of the auto responders. If you get those questions, you need to send those directly to either hcbmainstream@kyhousing.org, or if it's emergency housing voucher, that would be hcbehv@kyhousing.org. And then they will respond and get back to you with where we are in the process.
Right. And then also understanding, it's not just the clientele. Often, the applicants will think that the landlord has done their piece of the paperwork, and then we'll get a response from HCB Mainstream that's like, oh, by the way, this is missing, 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 this is missing. And again, that's kind of the we are doing everything we can to make good referrals with zero control over the process. So I think if you're hearing some frustration in my voice, that's probably where a lot of this is coming from.
So when you say zero control, what do you feel would help the process?
I think, my question, going back to lots of times we will be working with landlords that we're working with in other programs like COC or something else. Sure. And so the landlords won't understand that someone on our staff can't come and do the HQS inspection, and they don't understand why. And then they're frustrated with us. So that's, if that's not, that seems to be the big stumbling block on our end.
Okay, so I will say this: if you run into those situations where you're dealing with a frustrated landlord, we will be more than glad to reach out to that landlord and explain the differences between some of the COC programs versus our mainstream and EHV program. We understand there are differences. We understand there are different things that you as a COC may be able to do versus our regular housing choice voucher program can do. And we will be glad. We have a landlord liaison, Sarah Brockman. And then we have staff. We'll be more than glad to reach out to that landlord and explain those differences to try to alleviate that confusion.
Okay.
Okay. We also have we developed during conference last year, if anybody attended the conference last year, the housing conference, we created a document and it shows the differences in our programs, our regular housing choice voucher program, our EHV, mainstream, who's eligible for security utility deposits, what's the voucher length time, those kinds of things. And we can provide that to you, Adrienne, if you think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I was at the conference, but I don't think I have a copy of that. So if you want to send it over, that would be fine.
Sure. Yeah, anything we can do to help just let us know. You can also reach out directly to Jonathan, Stacy, or I. And we'll be more than glad to discuss anything. Or, if you've got a landlord we need to speak with, we'll be more than glad to do that as well. Okay, any other questions? Kelly, I think you had emailed me and said you had some other questions. Is Kelly on the call?
I do, and thank you. That they are. I do have several. So I guess I'll just go ahead and kind of start with an easy one. So when I reviewed the administrative plan, something that I think would be really helpful for me. So the question is, what would it take to cite when a policy pertains to a particular CFR throughout the document and when it's a discretionary policy? So when there's the difference between the two, and when it is based on CFR, like the 60 days for source documentation, is there a way to provide that citation and a link using the ECFR website? Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. So what our administrative plan is for is in the 24 CFR, and we go by code, or 24 CFR 982, 983, 5, and 8. Those are our chapters that we go by. What we do, there are musts and there are mays within the 24 CFR. And what an administrative plan is for is that if there are mays within the 24 CFR, a PHA must develop a policy, right? So what our administrative plan is the policies that we have developed based off the 24 CFRs that we have the discretion to develop a policy for. We have talked about redoing our admin plan for years. So we will take that into consideration. And as we move forward to update those chapters, we will try to do that.
Thank you. And I appreciate that explanation of what it looks like on your all's end. Sure. Another question I have, just kind of general, what would it take to survey program participants to annually or when at a time frame that makes sense to obtain general feedback on how to improve the service delivery of the special purpose vouchers?
So we can do surveys at any time. It's just a matter of creating the reports. A lot of our clients do not have an email. So we would only be able to survey those that have a current email. But, we can do that at our discretion. So, we can take that into consideration moving forward as well to maybe do that annually.
Thank you. And it's something that we've done to some degree in collaboration with a national service program. So I know that it can be difficult to go through and also make those phone calls to conduct the surveys with as many folks that you are surveying.
Yeah, we would be able to do that with email. There's with the number of folks we have on our program, phone calls, I don't know that we would be able administratively to do that.
So I guess the other another question is how could the Kentucky Housing Corporation identify the discretionary policies that create unnecessary barriers? I know that there are a lot of things like the 60-day source documentation that has to come from the client, and there's really no way of, there may not be a way of working with the Social Security Administration data exchange to help obtain that because of the way the CFR is written. But is there a process, and maybe this is the process to identify those policies and review those?
So the regulatory requirement states that when a family is initially leasing on the program, that the verifications that we receive have to be within 60 days. So I understand that is it could be a barrier with the Social Security Administration, right? So on the documentation that we provide the link that they can go to the Social Security Administration and set up an account where they can pull down their award letter. Does that answer your question?
Well, with that one specifically, it was one as an example, but the question is just, yeah. And with that, we run into barriers with folks. Like you said, a lot of them don't have email.
Sure.
Computer literacy is non-existent. I mean, it's difficult for folks to be able to obtain that especially when they're homeless and staying on in places that are not safe. It's hard for them to get that benefit letter, even though they may have their direct express card or something to that extent. So it's but that's getting into the weeds. So I will.
Sure. And Kelly,
yeah.
I would be more than glad to have a conversation with you outside of this if you'd like to have a conversation. And we are always willing to partner and figure out ways to streamline. So I can set up a call with you and we can have that conversation.
I'd love that. Would you like me to continue through through the questions I have? They're not too many more to go, but
I mean, we're okay on time, I think, aren't we, Erica?
Yes, we're good on time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things I noticed in the administrative plan is that you all have to take on fraud investigations, and so the question is what would it take to refer those fraud investigations to an appropriate third party? So someone has called and said, hey, I think this tenant is double dipping or whatever the claim may be, or is not reporting accurate income, those sorts of things. Instead of having to be in the position where you are also having to investigate the folks that you're serving, is there a way that you could refer it to the appropriate, I don't know if law enforcement is the right word, but like to the IRS or other agencies, so you're not tasked with having to be both the police officer and the person that's trying to help?
So I can explain our process, the way that our fraud investigations work a little bit. So this may help to clarify your question. We have a compliance manager within our department. So any fraud investigations that we directly get through maybe our customer service line go directly to her. She has a process, that she will work through to determine if, maybe it's a legitimate claim, and then do our due diligence to follow through with that investigation as best that we can. We also receive fraud complaints through what we have on KHC's website as Ethics Point, and those are funneled through our internal audit managing director and to our compliance manager as well. We also receive complaints through HUD, through the OIG's office. Those come directly to Jonathan, who will then send those to our compliance manager for investigation. Depending on the outcome or the complaint, we will involve our legal department, which is not in our department, but is within KHC. So we feel that that's like that third party source that we can rely on within the Kentucky Housing Corporation to give us guidance as well. But we have not thought about sourcing those out. Funds don't really allow for us to do that at this point. Does that help clarify how our process works?
It does. And it's one of those things that I understand that if the CFR requires that you all do that first before bringing in a different federal agency or the like, or state agency, I can appreciate that your hands are tied on that. It does seem like it could be a very time-consuming administrative burden.
There are times it can be, yes.
Yeah. and it's also like these are so. But thank you. I do appreciate that clarification. One of the things that we have run into. So the question is, what would it take to apply universal payment standards across all of the special purpose voucher programs? And the reason I asked that is that because of the different payment standards. So as you know, with COCPSH, and we've been very grateful for the FMR waiver that will be lapsing soon or expiring soon, but it has typically with FMR, with the different payment standards, folks end up in competition with each other, because if I'm able to say to a property owner, I can go by rent comparable, I'm not stuck with this payment standard, and the other person who it's created an uneven playing field, is what I'm getting at. And so is there a way to have those universal payment standards across all the programs? And it would also alleviate a lot of confusion with property owners, because I can explain all the differences, but they're still kind of like, well, I understand that, but all the folks that are coming from mainstream or your programs or ESG programs, they're all currently homeless. Why wouldn't it be just the same across the board? So that's the background to that question.
So Kelly, just out of curiosity, what are the payment standards for PSH?
Right now, we can until March 31st. We can go by rent reasonableness and exceed the fair market rent. We try not to go beyond the 110% of FMR. But once that expires on March 31st, we will be stuck at 100% of FMR. So our folks who were on even playing field, who have been chronically homeless and disabled for over a year or years at times. Sometimes it's astonishing how long folks have been out there. Will be at a disadvantage when it comes to what their voucher can pay for versus another program. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. So I cannot speak as far as the permanent supportive housing rules, regulatory requirements. I don't know if that's a regulatory requirement that they be at 100% after the waivers expire on March 31st. What I can tell you is, as far as the housing choice voucher and our special purpose vouchers, is that HUD states that a housing authority can set their payment standards between 90 and 110%, or sorry, 120%. We currently have our payment standards at 110, except for a couple of our special purpose vouchers, which we are allowed to go to 120%. A universal payment standard sounds fantastic, but that would probably be at a level at HUD in Washington. That can't be established at our level. But we would be on board with that.
and yeah, and I hear you on that as far as like having the COC, having the continuum of care programs and the PSH programs be, it would probably take a lot more. But just even within the special purpose voucher programs, if there would be a way, because even with EHB and mainstream, it's we're working with folks who, yeah, again, that like you said, mainstream's at 110%. I think EHB is at 120%.
They are, and that was based off of the guidance that we received from HUD. For EHB, it was at 120%. Our mainstream is at 110%, like our regular housing choice voucher programs are. Stacy, Jonathan, I did bat around going 120% across all of our programs, but it's a numbers game. So,
right.
You know, as you know, the FMRs did raise for us across the counties. They raised about 10% across the board, which was fantastic. But with the FMR raising about 10% and then us raising our payment standards across the board 120%, earlier we went over that utilization of our housing assistance payments money, our HAP money. So we were in fear that by going to 120%, we would utilize more money and be able to house less families. So we felt that at 110% that we would maintain that level of being able to utilize our vouchers as best that we could. Does that help explain?
It does. And I know that there's those are tough decisions to make.
They're very tough decisions. We would love to be able to give everybody 120% of the payment standards. But we just felt in the best interest of for our voucher holders as an entirety that we needed to stay at 110% across most of our programs.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Sure.
So I know Adrian spoke to some of the processes within communication of the process of for clients from when the application is submitted to lease up. One of the things that I noticed that I wanted to see is if there would be a way to set up a system to where when there are briefings and inspections, when the lease up is when the client's cleared to move in, if there's ways to, in addition to the written notice, also communicate to them in the same emails that we may receive. And then if there was some way to set up where they can get a phone call, because sometimes they'll have phones, but not access to their email. And so it can be difficult, like when we get an email like the voucher is ready and you need to do your briefing in 20 days. And while it seems like a reasonable time, it can be difficult to engage them to get that briefing done. So, but if they also received a phone call and it's all kind of at the same time, it can help get them into the door quicker. Is where I'm coming from there. So is that I just went on a long.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So our process is that we notify staff by mail, right? So we tell families in the briefing to make sure that they keep their current email addresses, make sure that we have their current addresses. With the volume that we do, we feel that as a participant on our programs, that it's their due diligence to check their mail. We would love to be able to call, but staff time just at this point it doesn't allow that. But I mean, we will take that into consideration, of course, and would love to be able to have more of that, going back and forth on the telephone. But we feel at this point that the mail that they receive saying, hey, you've been scheduled, you have you're eligible for your voucher, you need to do your briefing within the 20 days. And then that also gives them the information that they need to be able to log in. So at this time, that's our process. I know that's probably
I guess, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, I know that's probably not the answer that you're looking for, but it's more of, and I should be clear, like, even if there's a way for it to be automated, and it's not specifically a staff person that's reaching out, but like when that letter goes out, just a kind of, you've been deemed eligible, please keep an eye for your email and your mail, because a lot of these folks with mainstream are homeless and they don't have consistent access to that communication, those communication lines. So it's hard yeah. And we totally get it. We totally understand. What we experienced, Kelly, as well, is that the phone numbers that we receive on the documentation, they can change from month to month. So, we may have what we think is the most current phone number, but then we don't know that their phone number has changed until they call and they say, I haven't heard from you. So we think that education for our folks, we talk about it in the briefing, if we can both partner to say, hey, you need to make sure that you have, your phone numbers and your email addresses. If they change, you gotta let KHC know. Because we run into that as well, that we can't contact them because their phone numbers have changed and they have not contacted us.
I've experienced where
Yeah,
phone numbers have changed
it's a daily
couple times in a
experience.
week. Yeah, and that is definitely explaining, like, we've got to know as soon as you know that there's a different number. And
Absolutely, yeah, and again, we experience that every day.
Yeah.
We feel your angst with it.
One of the things with mainstream that I think would be really helpful is if we could have a weekly call among agency staff to discuss what the needs may be for specific cases, and be able to have that real-time data exchange between our agencies and your administration, to be able to get the things that folks need, or explain where the process is, or if someone has become housed through a different program, and those types of situations. So I guess I wanted to see if there would be a way to establish and regular, and I know weekly is a lot, but regular calls between the Housing Choice Voucher Program staff and the referring agencies.
Yeah, so like with our VASH program, we have a utilization call once a month. So we can definitely look at maybe having a utilization call once a month. But if it's, and we're open to, if it's not necessarily utilization issues that you may have questions on, maybe it's about the process or the paperwork. We are open and receive requests from other agencies to have trainings, with all of the case managers within a agency. We love to do those trainings. It helps just make sure that everybody's on the same page. So Adrian, I will offer that if you would like to have a training set up to do with HHCK to go over any questions on the processes, the paperwork. Just give me a call directly, and then I can set that up for your agency. But we will have a discussion and talk about maybe trying to do utilization calls on a monthly basis.
And it's something. What I'm asking for is, like, even if it's like it's a specific case. So, hey, and it gives an opportunity to, because like you said, you've got a lot of emails coming through, so it gives an opportunity to answer those specific case questions, in addition to anything to the process. Sure. Is kind of where I'm coming from.
And also, we are using a piece of technology called Smartsheet. And we have set all of the agencies that we receive referrals of, they have access to a report of all of the current referrals, and kind of, it's like a high level of where they are in that process. So if you don't have access to that report, we can definitely make sure that you have that link. The link has been given to every agency that has submitted referrals for mainstream. So if you don't have that link, you can just email us or email me, and we can make sure that you have that link to be able to see that high level of where they are, that they've been determined eligible, that they have been sent their letter for briefing, that we have their leasing packet, and that they're leased. So that may be also helpful to you as well if you don't have that information or link to that report.
We have I am. The smart sheet. I'm I want to express this in a way, just saying what my concern is with that. It's not updated in a live manner. Oftentimes those updates, okay, we've received the eligibility email, or there's more needed documentation or things of that nature, or they've been leased up. Those updates can take time to come through, quite a bit of time. So I want to express that I think there could be more live entries if it's possible. That would make the smart sheet very helpful to us, especially when there are times where we may be out of the loop as to when a client has moved in. We often don't see those dates get updated.
So are you?
And I'm just expressing what our experience has been.
No. We appreciate that. We appreciate that. Yeah. So when you say that it's not real time, are you talking about the high level report, or are you talking about the email notifications that you get?
The high level report. So oftentimes it is useful to be able to go back and look at, okay, historically, this is how many people we have served, but it's not a useful thing to use in real time when working with a client.
Okay, so the report is supposed to work in real time. So we can have a conversation to make sure that the report is updating timely. So as things progress through Smartsheet, that report should update as well. So if we can take a look at that to make sure that it's populating the way that it is intended to do so. So we can take a look at that.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to
absolutely
pass that on. Which that actually knocks out the next question. So this one is the last question I have is a big ask, and I understand the time frame. It probably is unreasonable with the amount of referrals that you all receive. But I'm wanting to know what it would take to review those submitted applications, just to see if they have the required documentation. I know you need to go through the process to see if someone is eligible, and that there's probably a lot of work on that side to figure that out. And I know but is there a way to see if the required documentation is within that application within 5 business days, and notify the referring agency on the 6th business day? That would give us an opportunity to create, like, okay, this is off by a day. The letter's off. The benefit letter is off by a day. We've submitted your application. We thought it was all together, but in the process of getting everything together, one of the documents is over 60 days old. We go ahead and say, hey, come in a week, and we'll know if we've got everything put together for sure. And if there is something missing or misstated in that required documentation, we can pass that information along to them and get that together so that everything still stays within that 60 days of being sourced. That is something that can be very difficult to get put together for some of the folks that I personally worked with. And so being able to say, hey, I need you to come in a week. I'll tell you what is missing, if anything, or all the required documentation is there. And then, then I'll update you on where the applicant, like when I receive notice about if you're eligible or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Stacy and I have had conversations with our mainstream staff to try to streamline that process to make sure that those referrals that are coming in are reviewed timely, to make sure that you do receive that if there's information missing. So we have had conversations with staff regarding that. And also, if just going to throw out, we would be more than willing to have a training with the HHCK staff to make sure that everybody's on the same page and understands what it is that we are expecting when we get a completed referral packet in. So, we don't mind to have that conversation and do that training as well. But yeah, we have had that conversation to make sure that those packets are being reviewed timely.
And I cannot imagine getting all of those from across the state. And it's more of just an initial, like the idea is more of an initial glance over so that while we have engagement, we can continue to maintain it. If there is, again, it's something that I'm human and I've made several mistakes sometimes on looking at when everything was dated and signed, and then when we got the benefit letter, because that's the first priority that I usually work with folks. Is like, okay, the verification of disability or your disability benefit letter is going to be the most important piece. And then by the time, like I said, working with literacy issues or just the experience of that they're going through, which is terrible, and sometimes of getting that application done while they're also homeless. Those dates can be misaligned. I think it would help with that. And again, I'm not asking for a full application review within 5 business days, but more of the just do the dates match up? Yeah.
Sure. And, and we, again, Stacey and I had that conversation with our staff. I do want to say that our staff receives numerous referrals a day. But our staff is fantastic. They do understand the urgency. They do understand that we are dealing with those folks that are, in a homeless situation. And they are truly fantastic. So we appreciate your patience as they work through their day as well.
I believe I do want to come back to the inspection thing.
Sure.
It is, I understand from your all's perspective, like, okay, if we can't even get the rent negotiated to the point where it needs to be, there's not, we don't need to go out and inspect. But there is precedent in other states, and I was trying to recall which state it was, where the PHAs have collaborated together to be able to do inspections as proxies. If a property owner is in the midst of negotiation, sometimes it can help to know, okay, my unit passes, so I know that I'm going to get, if I can come to the compromise of an agreement of what the contract rent should be, I know it's going to work out. And I know, or if it fails, I know what I need to be doing in the midst of negotiations. So that's something that I would just ask to consider what would it take for us to be able to collaborate on that front and be certified, and it not be just a one-way street up where you're certifying us for free necessarily, but that we're working together to where that's mutually beneficial. Just as an example, I've done that for another agency. They did have a smaller staff, but the folks who did inspections were, they actually had the flu, and it was going to be a couple weeks before they could get out there. And the person needed the unit to be ready. They were in an emergency situation that was going to go into the unit, and I was able to cut time by 2 weeks by just going down the road, like it's just a couple blocks away from our office, and I could do the inspection, get it done, pass on the documentation to that agency, and then they were able to complete the rest of the leasing process. So that's just that is something that I would like to ask you all to reconsider as something that could really be a boom. And I know that you are fast at getting the inspections done when the request is ready to be made, but it could be also something that is used as a negotiating tool as far as in the midst of that. So that is that's my question there.
Okay, so I can answer that question. Adrian and I talked a little bit about this earlier in the hearing. As you know, we do have our inspectors are housed in our compliance department, and we cut down the time that a EHV or mainstream voucher holder inspection has to be conducted within 5 KHC business days. It used to be 10, now it's 5. So that's been recent. So we have cut down that inspection time from 10 to 5. We are working with the Housing Contract Administration Department, and they have hired 4 or 5 housing connectors. They have been trained by our compliance team, and they are certified in HQS as well. So we have a process in place that if the inspector cannot get out there within the 5 business days, that the housing connectors can go out and do the inspections. So, and that has happened. We've had successful inspections completed by the housing connecting team. 5 business days for staff that service the entire state, we feel is great. That it's a great turnaround time. Again, we have worked on that recently. So hopefully you'll start to see the benefits of that.
And I agree. I think that's a fantastic turnaround.
Yes.
It's, I guess where I'm coming from is like, even at the point of where negotiations are occurring before the request for inspection is put in. Is there a way that those two things can happen at the same time?
So I will say that if you're working with landlords, we talked a little bit earlier about that we have developed a housing choice voucher landlord webpage on our website, www.kyhousing.org. It's specifically for landlords that are on the HCV program, no matter what program under that umbrella. We also have created quarterly webinars for landlords so they can come. It's a forum for them. We do a training on how the process works. We talk about rent reasonableness, the inspection process, but we also offer a service, which is a pre-HQS inspection. So there's a phone number that the landlord can call, and every Thursday they will do a virtual pre-HQS inspection. So Dustin Clark, who is the manager of our compliance inspectors, will work with that landlord, walk around the unit virtually with the landlord and say, hey, if I was coming out to do an inspection on your unit today, this would fail, this would fail, this would fail. We feel that this is a very good service that Kentucky Housing offers. It is not utilized near enough. So if you run into landlords that are have that concern, please have them call us and we will set them up with a pre-HQS inspection. It's a service that we offer. And I can send Adrian the flyer and she can disseminate that through HHCK staff. And then you can have that on hand to give to a landlord or email that to a landlord if you're speaking with them.
I do pass that on.
Absolutely.
I know what you're talking about. The issue with that is that it doesn't count if they're in the midst of negotiation.
It doesn't count, but it will also speed up. It will speed up the time if they come out to do the inspection versus if they came out and they didn't do the pre-HQS, it would fail. If they did the pre-HQS, now they know what to fix. We go out, we do the inspection within 5 business days. Now that unit's going to pass and they're not going to have to come back out. So we do feel that it is a benefit and will help speed up the process.
Okay. All right. That's all I had. Thank you so much for your time.
Welcome. Anyone else have any questions? Good deal. I think that's all we have. Erica, unless anybody else, is there any questions in the chat?
There are currently no questions in the chat. If Marty, can you go ahead and share the contact information in case people weren't able to attend live today and maybe they watch it on the YouTube and they have a question? How can they get a hold of you?
Is there a chat? Can we do a chat? So my email address is mmainos@kyhousing.org.
And I've put that in the chat.
Sure. And then the specific emails for the special purpose vouchers that we talked about mainly today are it's hcbehb@kyhousing.org. That's for our emergency housing vouchers. And if anyone has a question for our mainstream staff, that's hcbmainstream@kyhousing.org. And anyone can attend our landlord webinars. So anybody on the call that would like to attend our landlord webinar, it's actually next week. And I will be conducting the webinar. If anybody would like to join, you can go on our website at www.kyhousing.org and go to the HCB landlord page, and you can register. It's a regular webinar, and it's open. We have our Dustin Clark, who is our manager for compliance inspections. He's also on the call, so you can ask any HQS related questions that you may have as well. We appreciate everybody's time today. It was a good hearing. Lots of questions.
Well, then, as we conclude, I just want to say thank you for our tenant assistant staff for answering all questions. Make sure to stay in contact if you need anything else, questions, comments. And then finally, I want to thank the KHC communication staff for making it possible to do a hybrid in-person virtual hearing today. So thank you so much. And that concludes the hearing. Stay in contact if you need us. Otherwise, we all hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.